Good morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. It's good to see you. So we're going to be studying the Parasha Vayeshev, and we will be covering basically this. Absolutely, they are my favorite parashot. These last four parashas of the book of Genesis. They're my favorite because they talk about the life of Joseph. And the life of Joseph, it's very interesting, and I think we can find a lot of messianic connections and parallels. For me, the life of Joseph is a really personal story because this December the 12th was the anniversary of my grandmother's passing away, and she always called me that I was his Joseph, in Spanish, Jose. And there's an interesting story that my grandmother wanted me to be. My grandfather was named Joseph, Jose. And my grandmother, the majority of the cousins that I have from my dad's side, they're all women. So she wanted to have another Joseph. And she said, like, he has to be named Joseph, so he's Joseph Mendoza, like my grandfather. But my father was really, really wanted to have a Carlos. So that's the reason my name is Carlos, or Carlos Jr., because my dad wanted me to be Carlos. And he said, if I have a son, I want it to be Carlos. And if I have a daughter, I want it to be Carla. So either way, he will get his name for a girl or for a man. He wanted to be Carlos or Carla in that regard. So my grandmother always said, like, you wanted me to be Joseph, but my father said no, he's going to be named Carlos, and then my second name is Rodrigo, so Carlos Rodrigo by my one of my aunts. And anyway, so I never got the name Joseph, but I have been, through passing the time, I have really identified with Joseph in many ways. I always felt that I was loved in many ways with my family and in the elementary school. When I was with my friends and everything, I was in a really good elementary private school when I was in Mexico. And I always feel loved. And it was a really tight group of friends and kids, and I have a really good time with them. And then later on in life, you start knowing, when I moved, I was raised in Mexico City until the age of 16. And then by the age of, let's say, the age of 16, I moved to another city called Querétaro. And that has my journey started. And I went to a new high school. I was a new kid there. And I started realizing that people didn't like me. So I went for 3 years of heavy bullying through that period of time. And that's what I kind of started connecting with Joseph, right? Joseph was this kid that he was very beloved by his family, very beloved by the people who is around. And then the brothers started not liking him to the point that they wanted to kill him, to get rid of him, because they cannot have. What was Joseph's? You have to think about why he was not like Joseph. Well, it is, the Bible always talks about this. Something that I love about the Bible that you cannot find in any other religion is that normally in other myths or stories in other religions, people is just perfect, right? It's you read the Greek mythology and everybody is kind of perfect. They do some weird things and stuff like that, but in reality they're super powerful, they're almighty, they do everything right. But what it makes special the Bible is that the people who supposedly should be our heroes, they're not always perfect. They always have issues and flaws. And our father of faith, that is Abraham, the first one to acknowledge Hashem into the world and brought us and had this communication directly with Hashem, he had a lot of issues in his own life. And we're going to have this issue repeated with Isaac, and we have this issue repeated also with Jacob, and then we have those issues repeated with Joseph. because let's say that in the story of Isaac, a couple of parashot ago, we see that actually they have favorites. Isaac has his own favorite in the story, and his mom has his own favorite as well. So they have favorites. So what happened with Jacob? Jacob, when he married, he wanted really to marry Rachel, Rachel. And then he finds out that he does not, then he got Leah, and he has sons with Leah. So these are the less favorite sons. So you have Judah, one of them, Levi, that they are from the side of Leah. But you have also people that really, really love, that they are, in this case, Benjamin and Joseph, that they are the sons of Rachel. So what happened? The dad has some favorites in the family, in this case Joseph, and he gives everything else because they are the sons of Rachel. So we start having right there a dysfunctional family that start to grow in. They have 12 sons and 12 sons, one daughter, Dinah, and we see what happened. The Parasha Vayeshev, he's sad. So it's when actually Jacob sat down. And the sages told us that actually Jacob settled. He was passive in his upbringing. He was started being passive about his faith. Remember, Jacob had a really tough life. Let's be real. It was tough. Isaac has like a better life, actually, than Jacob had. He has to flee. He has to be confronted. It was given the blessing to him. His brother wanted to kill him. He has to go and now work with Laban. And Laban, he was a terrible person, actually. It's almost like he was practicing witchcraft and all kind of stuff. He have idols in his house and everything. So he goes to in that environment, and also he tricked him and he would Leah instead of Rachel. And he had to work 14 years for him, and then he had to trick him in all this stuff, so he could not abandon that land until he decided to leave it. And then he has to confront his own brother later on. That is a partial reconciliation. And all this is very important in the prophetic aspect, because when we are talking about these relationships that we are seeing, they have a prophetic scale, okay? When we see the life of Isaac, Isaac represents Judaism. And Jacob Isaac represents, but Esau represents what we call Christianity today. And they go and try to reconcile, but this is not a real reconciliation what happened. Actually, the sages told us, and if you see actually in the Torah scroll, I like to point it out, when we're actually reading from the Torah scroll, I found that the place, it has little dots on top. And in this part in the Hebrew, is actually Rashi and other commentators, they say that actually he tried to bite, Esau tried to bite Jacob. So it was not a real reconciliation, because the reconciliation between Judaism and Christianity have to come later on. That is going to be something prophetic into the future. That is not going to happen in this story. So it was a partial reconciliation. And what is going to be the reconciliation? Those parts have to come together. The same we see in this story. In this story, we see the life of Joseph. But also we see the life of, who else? The life of Judah. Judah is going to be, because what is happening right now is that we have the story of Joseph from one side, we have also, we're interrupted into this study of Judah. And what have to do Judah in this place? We're reading the story of Joseph and then get interrupted, right? It's like when you are seeing a good movie and you are in a climax, and then you get interrupted by this other story that, who cares, right? I don't know if it happened to you in movies. Have you had that you're watching a movie and it's a really climactic point and everything, and then you get interrupted by other side story that doesn't really have a lot of conjunction into the story. You know, who cares about the life of Judah? We're reading about Joseph. Well, the reason there is an interruption there is because in the middle of all this, it's telling us this is a fight between the two messiahs. We talked the last time that the last time I spoke, actually, we're talking about the two messiahs, the Mashiach ben Joseph, the Messiah son of Joseph, and the Mashiach ben David, the Messiah son of David. And they seem to be two contradictory figures. Two different ones. The rabbis talk a lot about that. They talk about Mashiach ben Joseph and Mashiach ben David. The suffering servant from Isaiah 53 and the glorious king is coming in Zechariah chapter 8. Chapter 14, it talks about the king who is going to be reign over, but this seems contradictory. One suffers and one is a king that is going to be over all the earth and is going to be reigning from Jerusalem. So we see that actually this is the way that is working in the prophetic sense. These are stories that is talking not only, I said it before, the most prophetic book that we have in all the people say, well, the book of Revelation is how prophetic it is, or Isaiah, or yeah, there are prophetic books, you know. But the most prophetic book we have ever had is called the Torah. 5 books of Moses. That's the most prophetic because it's telling us what is going to happen in the future. The Torah tells us about that. So I'm just reading Genesis 37, 3-4. It says, and by the way, if you can open your Bibles and you have a Bible and you wanted to read through with me, I always love that about going to church, right? Before all the digital thing, people just open their Bibles and kind of participate. With the electronics, I think things change a little bit, and now we have, thankfully, we have our Bibles in our phones and tablets and things like that. So now we are going to go Genesis 37, 3-4, and I think they're in the screen. It says, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his other sons, because he was the son of his old age. So he made him a long-sleeved tunic. Okay, well, and you see in different translations, if you go to the Hebrew, there is always a discussion if it is a multicolor tunic or it's long-sleeved tunic and everything else. And it just because the Hebrew is not really clear about it. But this, I will tell you that actually the reason they didn't like this robe is something else. And actually Rashi is going to point out what is the real reason why the brothers didn't like this tunic. What it means, that tunic. Because people think it just was a special tunic and that's it. It's something more than that. It's something much more like that. They say when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak with him in shalom. In other translations, in a civil manner. So this idea, something about Joseph is that Joseph was not lying to them. When he starts talking about these dreams, he's talking about these different circumstances. He is not lying to them. He's just speaking the truth. He's talking about the dreams he's having, the experiences he's having and everything. But what happened is that Joseph was in the age around the age of 17. He was not very mature about it, right? We see, for example, Miriam, Mary, the mother of Yeshua, she kept a lot of things in her heart, right? This is the scriptures. She kept why? Because she was mature enough that to say, if I start saying all these things, that this son that I have is super special, is going to be is not going to be good, right? Because now you have people who is going to actually not like him. Actually, Yeshua really, the ministry, if you think about the life of Yeshua, and I think in this way, is that he was just a normal guy, a guy who was really a tzaddik. A tzaddik is a righteous person. Joseph Sadiq, he went to synagogue, he did everything right, but nobody really saw was something really. He had something special in him, but people could not decipher what it was. He could actually blend into a group of Jews. But when he goes and gets immersed with John the Baptist, Johanan the Immerser, and he goes to this, he realizes that he's the Messiah. But he was, in my opinion, that's the reason we don't have a lot of recollection before. Actually, the only stories we have is when he was in his childhood, he goes to the temple and he starts talking with the leaders and everything. And then we have his birth, and we have those really stories before that moment. We don't have a lot of stories of Yeshua. And I believe the reason was because he was blended into, he was just a righteous Jew in the middle of them. And people, they say, well, this guy is kind of special. Something is going on with him. But until he started his ministry is when we start seeing the miracles and start seeing. But before then, I think he was just another righteous, special Jew, but he was not something that he was not doing miracles or anything else. Anyway, I went a little bit of re-rail about, but there are a lot of parallels between the life of Joseph and the life of Yeshua. There are a lot of parallels. It's a very messianic figure that let us get an insight of who Joseph really was and who Yeshua is. Because many of the things that happen, it gets a messianic connotation. But I think the important part that we need to understand about this is the prophetic picture that he has. And also, I think we have to learn something about Joseph. Remember that I was saying the first place that Joseph, the story of Joseph, the stories of the Bible is for us to learn. Learn from the mistakes, but also learn about the things that they good. And the way Joseph reacted about all these situations, if you see, Joseph never complains about anything. Does he complain? Is how hard is jail? How hard is this? And he never complains. No, it says, not that we know of. Well, in the text, actually, he never complains. We have others that complains, actually. We have many people in the Bible who actually complain, God, why you are doing this to me? You know? But he never complains, at least in the text. Did he ever complain? I don't think so. I think Joseph was a different kind of guy. He was a descendant of a great legacy. When we do the Avot, the prayer on the Amidah, we do the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why we plead to them is because they make an eternal covenant with God. And when we plead to them, we remind God, in a sense, it's not that God needed to be reminded, but it's a reminder also ourselves that he made a cabinet. No matter how bad or good we are, God still has his cabinet with his people, right? Can we say amen about that? Amen. Yeah. The covenant will never be broken because what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did. And the final conclusion about this legacy is Joseph. But Joseph had to be tested in order to get that legacy. Okay? In Genesis 7:8, we see that his brothers retorted, yes, you will certainly be our king. Oh, will you be truly be a king over us? His brothers say to him, would you really rule over us? So they hated him even more because of his dreams and because of his words. So we see actually, this is the same thing that happened to Yeshua. You know, in Genesis 37:11, it says his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. You know, his father is saying, well, I don't think putting this code to him is really good idea. I think he's getting problems. Have you ever seen that sometimes in the family, I don't know if your parents play any favorites in the house, but this is really bad, right? When they have a favorite in their house and you feel like your sister or your brother is a favorite and they have a special treatment, what is start to happen with that? Start be jealousy between the brothers or the sisters because you feel your father has, give greater gift to your sister and brother. They have a special treatment and they support them more in certain areas or financially. And you start creating these unhealthy relationships, and that's what is going to happen. But the idea of God is that through Joseph, he's going to be able to repair the family. And that's the role of Messiah ben Joseph. The role of Messiah ben Joseph is to fix the family. So when Messiah ben David comes, Yeshua, as a king, the family will be completely repaired. But the process that we are right now, it's a process of restoration. We have to be able to be restored first, in the same way that Joseph was. Remember that Yeshua, in John 1:11, the scripture is not there, but it says, he came to his own and his people, but they did not receive him. In the same way that Joseph was not really well received by his brothers, Yeshua was not really well received by his people. They didn't like him. They didn't want to receive him. Do you see the parallel? How Yeshua was hated by his own people? Many of them, not all, but many of them, they didn't like him. It's because the role of the Messiah ben Joseph. Why we call Messiah ben Joseph is because this is a story. The story of Joseph, because Joseph suffers. It is interesting too that in the New Testament it just don't talk a lot about Joseph. It doesn't, right? It never makes the connection between Joseph and Yeshua. But the parallels are astonishing. Okay? So we see that in Genesis 37, 22 to 24, we see that he was put into the pit, So it says, as soon as Joseph came up to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the long sleeve tunic he had on. And I'm going to give you a really cool hidush, I think, an insight of actually this what it means, this robe. Okay? It says, and then he took and threw into the cistern, and the cistern was empty without water in. So there wasn't any water there, so they threw him. But what this sleeve was, and Rashi commented, really interesting, the long sleeve garment, this was a garment that his father had given him additional to those of his brothers. So what it means? So Rashi, from this verse, he knows that this canap that he has, this robe that he has a double tunic, because they have to strip it from two of these are two garments that he has. So one that they have, all the brothers have the same kind of robe, but he has a double special garment. What it means? This means that these robes signify that he was going to be the firstborn. Who is the firstborn in the family? Who is? Reuben, right? Reuben was the firstborn, but in his eyes, he's not the firstborn. Who is the firstborn for him? Who he chose for wife? Rachel, Rachel. Yeah, Rachel. That was for him, his wife, and all the others was not that important, in other words, because he was strict with Leah. Even Leah has the firstborn. Okay? So all the others are not as important as Joseph because he was the firstborn of Rachel. And we are going to see that actually Jacob overprotects later on Benjamin because he is the only son he has with Rachel. Rachel didn't have a lot of sons or daughters. So Rachel, he's overprotecting him. Okay? So this double garment means that he was going to receive the double portion. So when they saw with this garment, whatever it was, multicolor, long sleeve, whatever, the only thing that signifies is that he was going to receive the double portion of his family. And that's the reason why everybody hates him. It's not amazing to discover that? That's what Rashi actually tells us with this, that he has an additional robe from his brother. So everybody has the same thing, but he has an extra one. And that signifies the double portion. Actually, the one who makes that is Rabbi Foreman, is the one who actually makes this amazing connection based on this verse of the commentary of Rashi. Rashi takes it for Genesis Rabbah. Genesis Rabbah is a midrashic word And he takes it from this and he commented on that. So that's where it's important to also understand the Jewish literature, because that gives us the insight of things that we are sometimes not aware of. The little things, the little phrases into the Hebrew and what it means. So I like this. I love this. This is also in Genesis Rabbah. And check out, this not in the screen, but I'm just going to read it to you. The fathers of the tribes were busy selling Joseph. Jacob was busy with his sackcloth and fasting. Judah was busy taking a wife. Meanwhile, the Holy One, blessed be he, was creating the light of Messiah. It's not amazing? What it means is that God, between these purges that we haven't, they're busy doing this, they're busy in this, but God is in the works to bring the light of the Messiah. That is what is happening in this era. We're seeing different factions. We have the Jewish people, Orthodox people, and we see Christianity. We see actually Islam that has to do with all this, what is happening all around us. And God is in the midst of everything else working to bring the light of Messiah. So even the hard things that we're seeing into the world, the rumors of war, the economy, whatever you are seeing right now, is everything God is doing is to bring the reconciliation through Joseph, so Messiah ben David, that is represented by Judah, can come into the world. So we are in that step right now. But first we have to create a reconciliation. And the biggest reconciliation story that we can have is between Christianity and the Jewish people. Because for so long, for 2,000 years, Christianity has been persecuting the Jewish people because they don't believe in Messiah. But do they believe in Messiah? I would say they do. Not in the name Yeshua, but they believe in the Messiah. They have a prayer. They pray every single day, 3 times a day, about the coming of the Messiah. So they believe in the Messiah. Actually, the 13 principles of Rambam says that one have to believe to be a practicing Jew in the coming of the Messiah. If you don't believe in the Messiah, you're out of the faith. It's part of the 13 principles of faith that Rambam Maimonides talks about. So yeah, they're messianic. They pray for Messiah, but they have not yet recognized Yeshua as the Messiah. That has to be in the final end, when Joseph reveals to his brothers. But who is the job for revealing? Is this our job, or is it the job of the Messiah? You know, because in Romans it says that we are partially blinded. The Jewish people is partially blinded. Okay? So it's not that we are totally blinded. Some people believe in this, sorry to say it, but in Christianity, believe that they are totally blinded. But Paul never said that. He said they are partially blinded. What I think is that they have the concept of the Messiah. And if you read the Jewish writings, the Mishnah, the Talmud, all that, you will see actually this belief of the Messiah is very present in Jewish thought, but it's partially. It means that there is a point in history that Yeshua is going to be visible for the Jewish people, and that's when redemption is going to come, because Yeshua said it is up to the people. The first redemption, how we started the first redemption? The first redemption came on Mount Sinai. That was the first time the Jewish people was redeemed from Egypt. God initiated that redemption. Who has to initiate the second redemption? I know that it's shocking for some people, because in Christianity they taught us that we needed to do all the, just Yeshua will just appear one day. And boom, and you're going to get raptured and all that. And he's just going to go like magic and everything going to be fine. But in Judaism, it's a different concept. The concept is we have to be the ones now to be reaching to God so God can do his final work. But it has to be through us first. So in these last days, it's important us to know that we have to do the work in order that the Messiah has been for 2,000. Why the Messiah has not come yet? Have you think about that? Why is so delayed? 2,000 years, nothing happened? It won't be that because we are not doing our job, our part, into these final days? Is that a question? I don't know. So, in the midst of all that is happening, you have to remember this. In the middle of whatever is happening into your life or in the world or whatever it is, you have to understand something. God is in the midst, working together into this. And he's doing, his job is to bring the light of Messiah into the world. Then we see in Genesis 39, let me see how much time I lose track of time. Oh, okay, I still have time, a little bit. And when everybody will start being hungry and will start looking at me like, yeah, I'm hungry, Carlos. Please stop. Please stop talking. My stomach is. I need some sandwiches, or I need some salad. So we see actually in 39:3-4, and he says his master saw that Adonai was with him, and that Adonai made everything he said unto his successful. So what happened is that Joseph goes into exile, basically, in the same way that Yeshua has been going through the exile for 2,000 years ago. And who adopted him? Egypt. Who Egypt represents? Egypt represents a place, the word for Egypt is Mizraim. And Mizraim is a place of exile. Yeshua, Jesus, has been exiled for 2,000 years from his people. You know? And one of the problems today is that the Jewish people, the sin that the Jewish people has and have to be repaired is the selling of Joseph, because Yeshua was sold as Joseph. And who they do sell? To the nations. They sold Yeshua to the nations. And now, after 2,000 years of exile, is the time a lot of people is finding out about the Jewish roots of the faith. And they're understanding that Yeshua was not a Gentile. Oh, no, he's a Jew. In Christianity, we always have the concept that he's Jewish, right? But he is God, so he's more than you, but he's Jewish. And he has certain customs, and he has a family. And some of the family they don't know. Because in some point in the story of Joseph, you see that actually the people start forgetting about Joseph. You know? Jacob, in this Jacob is a representation of who? Israel. You know? The angel changed his name from Jacob to Israel. Right? So he is a representation of Israel, and Israel doesn't know that Joseph is alive. He doesn't know. He thinks that Joseph was killed. They don't know anything about it. The only one is some of the brothers know, but they think that he was wiped out. You know, they sold it, but maybe he died. He disappeared. He will never come back. But in the meanwhile, Joseph is being carried upon, and it's being treated by, and God is still giving him grace into all this. They say that Joseph pleased him, and as he served, his master appointed him as manager of his household, and he entrusted into all possessions to Joseph. He was put as a person there. He received from Potiphar. Potiphar started seeing this guy is special, and he started giving to grace with God. What it means this, and I wanted to learn you, if you can learn a lesson from here, is something that when you have difficulties in your lives, sometimes God will not take you out of that situation because He wanted you to learn something from that situation. And that's the reason sometimes we are in certain situations. He wanted us to understand something. So the question that we have to ask is not, why, God, why, why? Why I'm in this situation? Why my coworkers treat me terribly? Why you are doing this into my life? Why I have financial problems? Why my dad is... Instead of why, what I have to learn from this. What I have to learn from this situation. And if you stay in integrity with God and his commandments, God is going to open you the doors. That's something that I know. That the Lord is going to open in the same way he opens the doors for Joseph. You know, God didn't took right away Joseph from his troubles and say, Joseph, you're free. No. He started giving him, he was a slave. He was sold to Potiphar. Potiphar started trading like any other slave. And he sees that this boy is special somehow. And he started putting him in charge of things. He started finding grace even he was a slave. He was still a slave. He was not just free one day to another. So maybe you will not be free from the things of this world. But God, if you maintain in integrity to God, to Yeshua the Messiah, to the commandments, God is going to open the doors for you. That is what I wanted you to learn. This is the lesson of Joseph. Sometimes we want it so badly, just things disappear from our life, hard situations to disappear from our life, disease to get out of our lives. But maybe God wanted to work in our hearts in something that we don't yet know. Right? So he's preparing Joseph for this final reconciliation moment to his brothers, right? So we see that he has favor. And then something terrible happened when he was, actually the sages tell us, Arbabanel and many others, they tell us that he was appointed with all these riches. Arbabanel was a Jewish commentator before the Jewish exiles in 1492. Actually, he was part of this process, Arbabanel, in the Middle Ages. They say, when his master observed that the Almighty was with him, why he was, they thought that he was with him. Because Joseph talked about God all the time. God talked about, some people don't even mention God or Yeshua. He praised the Lord, he talked about God. Never be afraid of what you believe. Never be afraid about that. Be proud that you are serving the Lord, that even you are not perfect, because nobody of us is perfect, because everybody has to do a work. We have to do a work in the Lord. Nobody is perfect. And who cares if we are not perfect? The important part is that we are trying, keep doing and working towards salvation. And he says, Arbabanel, that says that he possessed both the divine knowledge and fear of God, and that he was to speak, advising him in relation to his affairs, and he was witnessing such a great measure in divine grace as he will guarantee Joseph's success in all his endeavors. Joseph found favor in his eye. So that's the key. If you are loyal to the Lord, if you maintain to the Lord, and I'm saying these words upon myself because sometimes I have fear, of the future, of the things. I have flesh, like all of you. I have fear sometimes. All of us have fear. But I know that the promise is that we keep being in that path, trying to get this righteousness, we will be able to overcome. So then Joseph had a very difficult decision to take. Very, very tough decision. And I cannot imagine if one of us was in this situation like Joseph was, how every one of us will react at the age of 17, 18, 19, this very young, a lot of hormones. And then you have a beautiful wife of Potiphar asking you to go with him. It says in Genesis 39, 6-8. He has to take a very difficult decision. Sometimes God wanted to test us to see where is our heart. If we are really, our heart is with God, or maybe we don't. Because all of us have free will, and Joseph have free will. So it says in Genesis 39, 6-8, it says, so he released everything he has owned into Joseph's hands with him in charge. Nothing about except food he ate. Now Joseph was handsome, in handsome form and handsome in appearance. So only give the grace, only he was handsome. Now after these things, the master wife lifted up her eyes at Joseph and say, come, lie down with me. Enjoy. But he refused. Imagine that. Imagine 17 and 18, like, yeah, just come with me. And she's the owner of the house. She has everything. But he said no. He said to his master wife, my master doesn't think about anything in this house with me in charge. And everything that belongs to him, he is entrusted into my hand. So he knew if he had access, Joseph, to all the riches that Potiphar had at that time, that means that he cannot touch anything in this house. And he was so righteous that he tried to do the right thing, but he's going to cost him terribly. So we know what the story goes, and actually what happened, one part, Potiphar's wife take his robe and then accuse him on he trying to rape her. Tough decision, very tough. And then who is going to believe him, his story? He's a slave. Nobody's going to believe him that he didn't want to do what he wanted. So he said, well, he put it, and they go to this jail, this prison. By the way, this prison that we was put in was not a normal prison. God knew. This prison was specifically for the people who was from the elites of Egypt. It was a prison for people who mishandled, but he was connected with the Pharaoh and all that, because we see that later on they put the cupbearer and put the other guys there. So we know that this was not your common prison. I'm going to put you in the dungeon, whatever. He was a special kind of prison, and this is important into the story because later on he's going to find people from Pharaoh that they put in the prison. How long do Joseph stay there? And we don't see any part that says, Joseph, poor of me, God, like, why you put me here? We see many stories in the Bible. Why, God, you do this to me? And the prophets, even Elijah, why, God, you are doing this to me? But in this case, he didn't. Joseph stays straight, and he knows in his heart that God is going to deliver because he's innocent of everything that he said. When you are righteous before God, when you're trying to do your best to keep the commandments, not perfectly, because nobody does perfect. We have to get rid of that word. But we try to please God in our walk, we are going to be blessed. In what way? He's not going to take you out of the situation, but he is going to be doing the best of your situation. Amen? So, in Genesis 39, he enters into the prison. So it seems like the story gets worse. He was now a slave. He gets in charge of everything. He's in charge of everything. He's accused of raping Potiphar's wife. And now what happens? He is now in a worse situation than he was before. And now he goes to this prison. And it says in Genesis 39, 21-22, says, but Adonai was with Joseph, showing him grace and giving him favor in the sight of the prison garden. So he started giving him favor. And then it says the prison garden made Joseph supervisor. That's not amazing? About prison, and the prison says whatever they did, he was in charge of it. So he did the right thing. He went to jail, and what will happen if something you're trying to do, imagine that you are trying to do the right thing, right? Because maybe the camera will not capture me for the live streaming. But What will happen if you do the right thing? How many times it happened to you that say, but God, I did the right thing, right? I did the right thing. And then, but you put me in a worse situation, God. I tried to do, maybe God wanted what? The question is, what do the Lord wanted to teach me in this situation that I am now? Not why, it's what God wanted to teach me now. What God wanted me to change in my heart that I have inside. Maybe it's my ego. Maybe it's my rage. Maybe something interior that I have not worked through yet. And God wanted to put a little bit of light in my life. And puff. I have an experience one time when I came into this country. Let me tell you a story. When I come into this country, I got, after 3 months of not being able to work at all, after marrying Kate, they gave me, I have to wait for my visa for a while. So I have to actually wait for that. So I wait for 3 months, and then after that, I received my visa. So Kate was working 2 jobs at that time to kind of sustain us, and so we could pay the bills and everything else. And then the only job I could find, it was a part-time job, and somebody told me, hey, somebody has a job there, and so I went, and this guy is like, I know that you are educated, and you have this, and I feel bad for you, but the only thing that I can give you right now is a job cleaning toilets. Nothing wrong to cleaning toilets, nothing bad. But in my ego, he felt like in my country, I will never clean toilets. What in the world? Like in my country, if I go back to my country, I won't be doing this. So I took this job, and for 4 months, the Lord spoke to me about something. You have to get rid of your ego. You have. So what this period of time taught me is that it humanized me. It says like, well, maybe you will not do that, but that's not important. What I wanted to work with you in these months that you are in this job is to understand humility. He humbled me in a very special way. 4 months working, cleaning toilets, cleaning bathrooms, taught me humility. And I'm very grateful for the Lord for have that opportunity. Working on minimum wage, cleaning toilets, and also appreciating the people that I never appreciated before. Because when you see somebody cleaning your toilet, you don't think anything about them. It's like they're invisible. And I start feeling that. When I was cleaning toilets on this casino, I was invisible. Nobody put attention on me. So now every time that I go to the toilet and I see somebody who is cleaning, I try to thank them. Yeah, because I was in the same position as them. The only way that you can understand other people is put into their position. And when you have never been in their position, you will never understand what they're going through. For the people who were just cleaning toilets, I was just another immigrant for Latin America, Mexico, Portugal, whatever they wanted to think about me, and that was it. It was no connection. But now that I had the opportunity to be there and work with other immigrants and other people, I have the opportunity to understand and to be humble and grateful for all the things that God gave me before then. Right? It seems like a terrible point, but how many parts of your life you say, this was a terrible thing, but if this terrible thing didn't happen to me, I will not be the person that I am now. How many of you have, and look up those things that you were in distress, maybe you have problems, economical problems, or maybe you have something in your life and it was absolutely terrible, maybe an accident, maybe economical problems, maybe some person in your family died, maybe something happened in that moment that changed you forever. And you look back, and that time you were crying, You felt that the world was too much and God was with you in those moments. And then when you look back to those moments and say, man, this moment was terrible, but I'm just thankful to the Lord for being able to do these kind of things. How many of us just have those stories in our lives? This is the story of Joseph. It's a very human story. It's a story of a family that has issues. The family of God has issues today. The only one who can bring reconciliation is Yeshua. When we let Yeshua operate in our own lives, as Joseph, we will be able to be that family that he wants us to be. They say, Yeshua said, and I love this verse. It says, you will know that you are my disciple by the way one another, the way you love each other. That's the sign of we are truly the disciples of Messiah Yeshua, that we love each other, and we fail so many times of loving to each other, loving other believers, loving other people, you know. Sometimes we're really harsh with our Christian brothers, you know. They don't know about the Torah. They don't have the revelation yet. Or we are really harsh to our Jewish brothers that they don't believe in Messiah yet. But we, as Messianic believers, as I said it before, we're a bridge of reconciliation between Messiah ben Joseph, Yeshua, the suffering servant, and the future of Messiah ben David, the Mashiach, the Messiah, son of David. Joseph represents the things that we need to work with. Because remember, the Messiah ben Joseph is that he will work internally in the family. In the midst of everything that is happening to Joseph, into the prison, into Egypt, in Mizraim, everything that is happening, God is working in the heart of Joseph, but at the same time He's working in the heart of Jacob and the hands of the brothers. He is working in the midst of all this. And even in the heart of Jacob, that is having all the adventures. So I'm just going to close with this. And I just wanted to pray. I pray that each one of those, at least in this Shabbat, we can learn a lesson from Joseph. And it's that we are blessed for living in this country. We're privileged to be in this country. We are privileged to live in a nation like this, that we can have peace, that we have so many other things. And I just pray to the Lord that we can learn how to change our attitude and be grateful for what we already have instead of seeing what we don't have yet. And stop comparing ourselves to others. That the Lord can teach us big lessons in our hearts of humility and love, and have those things in our heart. You know, working in those in our interior. Lord, Yeshua the Messiah, we just wanted to thank you for this Parasha Vayeshev, and we can apply these lessons into our hearts, Lord. Thank you for the work that Yeshua is doing into the world, even sometimes we don't see it. I ask you for the reconciliation between the Christianity and Judaism, that one, we can be grafted in and join the nation of Israel, so all Israel will be saved, Lord. I ask you for the salvation for each one of us and the salvation that we have through Yeshua the Messiah. Let us be like Joseph, and we can take difficult decisions, that we can do the right choices in the difficult situations that we have in life, that we can put you over everything else, Lord. Then we are not lukewarm when He's come to decisions of faith, Lord. Thank you for all who you are. In the name of Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.